2085. Humanity faces extinction. Alien insects from the edge of our solar system, long hidden behind the facade of reality, descend to enslave us. Hordes of unspeakable horrors roll out from Central Asia, laying waste to anything in their path. The Church of the Fish God scours the world for lost occult secrets to unleash terrible forces. Dead gods awaken and turn their dreadful eyes toward Earth. And within hides a cancer, eating away at the very heart of the New Earth government. This is the Aeon War. This is the time of Cthulhutech.
I've been looking forward to this one.
Is it laying or lying? When it's Laying.
Laying.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure I've heard people
Read otherwise.
read it otherwise.
Interesting.
Read it how?
Lying.
Oh,
Like
then
they
that's
make it-
Lying.
Yeah, well, I feel like they make the AY because there's a whole debate over lay versus lie when dealing with, like, if it's
Yeah.
a person, they lay down. If it's an object, you lie it down, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think it's vice versa. People lie down, you lay an object down. But it's probably gone the way of the apostrophe. You know, it's like, it could be good either
Boy,
way.
that would make for an interesting change in that song. You know, I want to lie you down in a bed of roses while I sleep on a bed of nails. Okay, sorry. I
Bon
went there.
Jovi.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, but hey, welcome to Tone Travelers, and obviously this week we are going into Cthulhutech.
Cthulhutech 2085. They're very optimistic
Yeah.
of the future. I mean, I'm
Surprised that we make it that far.
I'm surprised we make it that far. Right now, I feel like we're lucky to make it to
This may be
2019.
the start.
Yeah. Come help us, the cult of the fish god. Come in and help us.
But yeah, so this is going to be an interesting property to talk about because really I feel we have two properties to talk about in this. We have the game itself, but this is our first time into the foray of H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu.
Yeah,
You know,
and there's a
whole
lot
mythos.
of games out there that
Oh, yeah.
incorporate the Cthulhu mythos in some form or fashion. Or it's not even, I wouldn't even call it Cthulhu mythos anymore, just Cthulhu mythos, because the things that are even the games that we have that are kind of plastered with Lovecraft's name or Arkham Files or Call of Cthulhu draw from so many other sources that were inspired by Lovecraft but didn't actually come from his head. So
Yeah.
it's just a huge, I mean, Robert Chambers, Robert Bloch, all these other guys. Who's the guy that did
Robert E. Howard?
Robert E. Howard?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, Robert E. Howard definitely had influence back and forth. Him and H.P. Lovecraft were actually pen pals
Mm-hmm.
and wrote in the same magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Robert E. Howard, for those of y'all listening, is responsible for Conan, and as well as Solomon Kane.
Tragic
So-
story for him, actually. It was very weird.
All of their stories are, I mean, Lovecraft stories.
Oh, no,
are
I'm talking
true.
about Robert E. Howard. It was
Yeah.
kind of a weird duck.
Well, but Lovecraft, I mean, we can get into this later, but Lovecraft had a pretty sad...
Oh, yeah, he had a weird
His
upbringing as well.
his end of life is just kind of,
Sad.
Mm-hmm.
just gone. So
Yeah, but no, definitely the universe of Lovecraftian horror, however you want to put it, or the Cthulhu mythos has expanded greatly. There was a Kickstarter this last year to publish stories in the mythos that are minority positive. So that would be something in the universe of H.P. Lovecraft, but it would not put the negative racist spin that his
Yeah, you
works
know-
have done.
Oh, yeah.
I've read a lot of stuff lately. In fact, I just read an article a few weeks ago. Now, I felt that the author was...
Flippant?
No. I felt they were very... I mean, they obviously had an axe to grind. And I will not defend Lovecraft's racism. I know he was very xenophobic.
Yeah.
There is a lot of very questionable stuff. But it was like, stop making games with this man's name on it. Stop taking his intellectual or his ideas and his property and making games. We're tired of it. He was a racist. We hate him. Let's get rid of him. And I mean, the article was very aggressive. And I was like, and you know, I'm kind of in a weird place because I enjoy some of his stuff. He was a very unique writer.
Yeah.
And he came up with some very interesting things and kind of made you think outside of a box, and it's the type of horror that isn't defined.
Yeah.
It's always unspeakable or it's indescribable, and it uses terms like non-Euclidean and this stuff that...
Cyclopean.
Yeah, cyclopean. You can't even figure out... Your brain, we don't have a real definition for what that looks like. It's like trying to describe a color that doesn't exist. There's no way to adequately put words to it, so he was very ambiguous in some of these descriptions of his...
But that's good.
It was, yeah, because it makes your brain create something, and you will scare yourself far easier than any line of text, because then it's like what you're really afraid of.
Yeah, exactly.
And so just for them to be like, everything he did is awful because he was this horrible racist bigot, I was like, we would lose so much of art and stuff. Not that better art hasn't come along, or there haven't been good artists that are not racist or bigoted in the century since then. But I'm like, to just disregard an entire portion of our history because it was a horrible time in our history.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is, okay, and I'm going to probably be blunt with my opinion, unless did you want to chime in before I do? Because I mean, I'm really blunt when it comes to this.
In regards to the Lovecraft racism issue,
Yeah.
yes, I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that he was racist, and he held rather not so unique views.
No, for his time period, he was...
Yeah, he was very much a creature of the time.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, we can look past that. I realize it sucks. As a minority myself, I understand. You know, I've seen some questionable stuff. At the same time, though, yeah, some of the jokes in Blazing Saddles are pretty tasteless, especially the French Mistake. I love that. I love that whole scene. And there's a song, Alice's Restaurant.
Yep.
He says some very poor things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
But I disregard that because I realized, you know what, it was okay back then. Obviously, it's not okay now.
Yeah, we
and
don't.
And the same thing with Lovecraft. No one could write the way he does it. We can still write Lovecraftian-esque stuff, but that doesn't, like you were saying, it doesn't devalue his work.
No,
in
or
a
his
general
contributions,
sense.
right?
Yeah, contributions, that would be.
And it will always be called Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
We're never, if anybody who talks about or writes about things otherworldly, indescribable horrors with tentacles and just these bizarre elder things. Sorry, but you were influenced in some part, whether you would like to erase him or not. He introduced those things. It's been done. You can't get away from what he's contributed.
So my side of it, and like I said, I'm very blunt on this, and it's not that I am unsympathetic.
You heartless.
I, in fact, agree a lot about his racism. I agree entirely about the desire to wipe that. That is why I definitely support the Kickstarter that happened last year.
Yeah,
where it
with
was
the minorities.
I definitely support that because the two things. He's dead. And in his life, he did not generate any benefit from his works. He was not a rich man.
Not at
He
all.
did not grow fame in his lifetime from his works.
I think so, yeah. I mean, he lived mostly penniless.
Yeah. His works and everything else has not aided him, and any kind of legacy that is tied to his name does not benefit him at all. He is dead.
Yeah,
Or
it doesn't
any-
benefit his estate because I think August Derleth still has it, right?
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing about that because the estate of Auguste Derleth,
Or Derleth, sorry.
I could be pronouncing it wrong. My understanding is that they claimed copyright on it for a long time, which is why it got pulled out of D&D and all that stuff. And then I think it was in the last couple of years it was uncovered that they really didn't.
Have anything
it was
back
kind
at
of a
that point.
spiritual inheritance.
Yeah.
August Derleth was his friend, so he had all that stuff. Because wasn't he the editor for like Weird Tales or something? He was a publisher, so I mean, he had been sent all this stuff, so he did have it. But to say that he owned it from an intellectual property type thing was not accurate, and so people were like, you actually literally can't tell us we can't use this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of changed. But I think the estate of August Derleth is still the kind of go-to, but there's also the HP Historical Society, the HP Lovecraft Historical Society, which does a lot in preserving his works and looking for his letters and things like that. So.
Yeah. But by and
Sorry,
large,
we-
but by and large,
We've talked about Lovecraft.
his works are nearly considered open license at this point. They appear everywhere. Books are published on it. Papers are published on it. People record it. Podcasts galore. People reading his works. You know, it's inescapable. But like I said, so he gained no monetary benefit or fame in his lifetime. That is just a fact. And at the same time, any legacy of racism at this point is also over because the universe that he created was bigger than him. The idea of the mythos, the idea of anything tied to him, while he is the basis of it, it has gone far and wide beyond him. There are so many things out there that are like minute compared to him. And that's the reality. It is a fandom, and it is something that has nothing to do with any kind of overall respect to him, other than just as the initial catalyst. And that's my opinion.
Well, as Roxanne said, if we totally stop doing anything, using anything that erases create, I mean, Richard Wagner, he was a serious anti-Semite.
Bram Stoker with Tale of the White Worm is one of the most horribly racist and offensive things that you could ever read, but yet, as far as my understanding is, Dracula is still considered one of the greatest works of literature.
Yeah. So it's a pick and choose. I really, the tone of the article really, I felt, was because that particular individual that wrote it was tired. It was just exasperated with the amount of Lovecraft stuff that's available.
Yeah.
And he's just like, stop making games about it. Because the new Call of Cthulhu game was announced. It hadn't been released yet. But he was like, oh my god, then we have... we have an entire shelf of Lovecraftian-inspired board games. Call of Cthulhu, the RPG, all the millions, it seems like now, Cthulhu or mythos-based RPGs. Because really... some of the scarier stuff in the games, or some of the more interesting stories, I believe, that have been used as basis for some of the items in games, come from Robert Chambers.
Yeah.
And the King in Yellow and stuff like that. I think that stuff is a little bit more creepy than some of the Lovecraft stuff, but it's so similar that you can't... I don't feel like you can have one without the other and have a good view of that era of horror writing.
Yeah, absolutely. So are we ready to go ahead and move on to the property?
Let's do it, yeah. We've had our Lovecraft rant.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, me and Roxanne both just absolutely adore Lovecraft. I don't know about you.
I'm actually a huge fan of his literary works, and his place in gaming overall was not something I was as familiar with until I married Roxy.
My introduction to Cthulhu was D&D.
Okay.
And they had the deities and demigods.
Yeah.
And it listed stats for all the gods, and one of them was mythos.
That's cool.
So that's where I got my introduction.
Well, it's really a Lovecraft... it was a Lovecraft podcast that really, in the last, 6 years, had been very influential in my propelling towards a career in podcasting, or at least a hobby, and that was the one that I introduced you to.
Yeah.
It was your first podcast. It was the HP...
literary podcast.
Was it the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast? No, it's the HP... I don't remember. I think it is the literary podcast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. So, Cthulhutech. We're not jumping into Call of Cthulhu for our first time touching this subject. We're actually We will. Oh,
not
yeah.
today.
You better believe we will.
I mean, we're on a Call of Cthulhu actual play podcast
Yeah.
temporarily right now, so we almost have to.
Yeah, but we are jumping into Cthulhutech, which was released in 2007 by Matthew Grau, who is still involved with the property. So, events of 2007, which really wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's only been 10, 11 years.
Seems like an eternity.
I hadn't moved from the Midwest yet. I was still living in my hometown. In fact, I was still living in my parents' house in 2007. So
Wow.
that's
Nah.
I know, I was a baby. I was a wee little baby. I was 23. I turned 23 that year, so I was 22 for most of it.
I'm not going to tell how old I was.
So, events of 2007. Besides that, was, going down the list, the famous wildfire that swept through Southern California, destroying 400,000 acres and 2,000 homes.
Is that okay? Question.
Mhm.
Wildfire question, because
It seems that there's a lot.
there's a wildfire. Yeah, there's one like every year. I mean, it's wildfire season. At certain times of the year,
Yeah.
it seems like, and that's a ton of property damage. How does that compare?
To some of the current ones. Some of the current ones have been bad, but that one, I remember firefighters from all across the U.S.
We're going
to help in that situation. I mean, it was a major catastrophe.
Yeah.
And as far as my understanding goes, the housing market in that area of California has never recovered.
Well, and it was at this time in history that the housing market period in the United States
Mm-hmm.
was.
Collapsed.
We were on the bubble,
Yeah.
and the bubble burst in 2008, I think. So.
Yeah. So that was a major thing. That year, the Virginia Tech shooter at the Virginia
Really?
Tech campus was in
For some reason, I
2007.
felt like that was way longer ago.
Yeah.
That was not the right way to say that. I feel like that was a long time, much longer time. Okay. I don't know how to say that. Much longer ago? There.
But yeah, that,
It works. We understand.
You knew what I meant.
Yes.
I remember when it happened. I remember all the calls. I remember people going home that day who were in College Station that I knew, they shut down the campus.
Was it just because, was it out of respect to shut down the campuses, or were they concerned that it was going to happen in other
Major
places?
reaction.
Okay.
The initial fear was that it was some sort of terrorism all over again, and there was no
Did they use the word
yeah.
terrorism?
Yeah, there was no way to know because there was no information coming out. All they knew is that there was a shooter at a campus, and so in order to ensure,
In West Virginia.
yeah,
Not Texas.
Oh, yeah.
West Virginia.
Yeah.
well, come on. I mean, I remember we lived in College Station during 9/11, and I still remember after it happened, even though it was in Washington D.C., it was the Pentagon, and it was New York. People were like, this could happen here.
Well, yeah. I mean, 9/11, they shut down. I think we all got to go home early. I was in high school. We all got to go home early because it was because parents just freaked out.
Yeah.
Parents were, gas started getting gouged. Gas prices, had skyrocketed. I think that day we had seen gas prices like at $4.
Not surprising.
No, because it just became, and so parents were taking their kids out of schools because they wanted to have them if something big was happening. And I remember they were publishing, and whether they were accurate or not, I remember seeing lists of the order that cities would be evacuated in times of that level of crisis. But the why I was asking if it was a reaction or out of respect is because school shootings happen all the time now,
Yeah.
and nobody shuts down a school.
Well, no,
for
there was one this last week where the school actually, after the shooting took place, opened back up later that day. And that was just this last week, and I was like, is that really where we've gotten to? Yeah.
So.
But let's keep moving on, 'cause that's tragic enough as
Yeah.
is. So the I-35 bridge over the Mississippi collapsed, dropping cars into the water.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah, it was not a whole lot of cars, but it was definitely one of those things that was like,
Let's
holy
see
cow.
where I-35 crosses the Mississippi.
Mhm.
I used to live out there. Mississippi.
Continuing on.
Well,
where-
over the Mississippi River.
Well, yeah.
Does I-35 cross it there? Because I know it comes up through Dallas and goes up to Kansas City.
I don't know.
Never mind.
I'm trying to
I'm
figure.
thinking of something else.
But other things, just continuing on while you're looking that up, that was also the year of the release of the very first iPhone. If you can
Really?
imagine. Yes,
Wow.
that was iPhone without a number on it.
All the way up in Minnesota.
No, you're crazy.
That's nuts. I didn't realize. It's one of those things. Rivers always throw me off. I'm like, it goes all the way over there. Why do we call it that? Why do we call it the Mississippi? If it starts here and ends not in Mississippi,
The Mississippi-
it might actually.
Well, the Mississippi Territory when it was founded was huge.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I forgot that there's history.
Yeah.
Screw this.
Well, it's like the Missouri River starts in like Colorado or something, and it's like, why wasn't it?
Colorado.
Well, I think that's. How do you say Colorado?
I'm
You
about
say
to-
Colorado?
Colorado. I have my little Texas draw. in there or
Colorado.
something. Colorado.
I'm gonna get
Colorado.
a pillow
Yeah.
over my face tonight, I'm sure.
No, no.
Hey,
I've
after
heard
last
people,
last podcast with all the words I was missaying, come on.
I've heard people say Colorado, and maybe I've said that. I just don't. I honestly don't think
I
about
don't
it.
care.
No, honestly.
But other things of that year. So, music. We had Umbrella by Rihanna. Soldier Boy released Crank That, which was a dance craze piece.
I saw that, and I was like, I don't know that song, and I don't know anything else that Soulja Boy did, and I'm just.
He really didn't do much.
John's like, well, when I was a DJ, and I'm like,
Yeah.
stop it.
That was
Just stop it.
That was one of the
So
songs
let's
that
not
you
talk
played.
about you being a DJ.
And it was a YouTube sensation. It was a viral hit where everybody was recreating the
those.
dance. Yeah, I
I
know.
hate those.
But doesn't stop it from being important pop culture history.
I mean, and the only part of Umbrella by Rihanna that I've ever heard is Ella, Ella, Ella.
Yeah. Other things that happened that year, Silverchair's Young Modern released, which was a great album.
I have not heard any of that album. The only
Really?
Silverchair, yeah. I don't believe it was played on the radio where I was. The only
There was a
Silverchair.
band called Silverchair.
There was. And
Wow.
their first album, Frog Stomp, came out in the 90s.
Now that one I saw on the backs. The Frog Stomp Tour T-shirts were so prevalent when I was in middle school. I mean, I just walked around people and I'm like, what the heck is this? But I have always wondered, and I've never looked it up. Are they named after the Narnia book?
I don't know. They're an Australian grunge band, or were. And
Doesn't mean they don't like the Silverchair.
they might. We actually, this tells you how long ago they were around. When my band, the Gops, when we were playing at the Performing Arts Recreation Center in Conroe, Texas, we covered songs from Silverchair off that album.
My favorite Silverchair, probably the only Silverchair album that I can even pretend to know, is Neon Ballroom. Which I think
That's
was 2002.
also that's another really
That
good
was a
album.
great album.
For those of you listening who have not heard before, I am so out of touch. So, which is why I have no idea what you're talking
We
about.
knew when, because I have always called Wagner Richard Wagner, and you did not pronounce it that way, and I was like, wow, Sam knows something.
I know my opera. So.
Yeah. Hey, I was listening to The Flying Dutchman the other day, and it was quite good.
Oh, that's one album I have to get. I don't have it yet.
Yes, let's move on from
Yes.
Silverchair.
Yes. That was also the year of the return of bands. A lot of bands came back and started releasing albums and doing tours, all because of the Guitar Hero and Rock Band
Really?
craze on
Is
video
that
games.
why?
Yes.
Oh, so like reunion kind of
Yeah.
things? Oh, wow.
Oh, so many bands put out albums that year, and you go down the list.
And they're-
People that should not probably have done so, but they got popularity, and they were like, "We're going to ride this horse for a moment."
Once again.
The
Yeah.
first band you have listed,
Uh-huh.
I have a story about that reunion tour because it's REO Speedwagon.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They came to Kauffman Stadium, where the Royals play, that year. I think they sang the anthem
Oh.
before a game, but they did a CD signing. Can you guess where? Just it's a place that's everywhere. It's in every city.
A place that's everywhere in every city.
In every city,
Subway.
and they picked one.
McDonald's.
those have both resided within this location at different times.
The
in history.
mall?
No.
Oh.
Oh,
If they had done a mall.
Walmart.
Oh my god.
They did a CD signing at my mother,
Wow.
because my mother was a cashier at Walmart for years. She worked at a Walmart, I think, for over 20 years. And yes, they did a CD signing at her Walmart. We actually still have, I think I saw it when we were visiting them.
Mm-hmm.
It has been shuffled in with some of my old stuff because it's the same size. It was an REO Speedwagon banner. They may have signed it with, old butt Kevin Cronin on this huge banner, with, he's the only one that I know
That
from
might
REO
be
Speedwagon.
$55 on Amazon.
At an AARP meeting. 55 plus for
If you're
55
lucky,
plus.
56, yeah.
But going down the list, so REO Speedwagon, Dokken, Bon Jovi, Poison, Bruce Springsteen,
Jesus.
and so many more came back out that year just because,
And how many of these people are actually still touring, and I'm worried that they're throwing hits?
I have no idea. And I did see REO Speedwagon not that long ago on tour. They were opening for, I can't
There's a
remember.
lot of bands that are still touring. That's why I was kind of wondering. I was like, okay, you have this year of band return albums, but were they not putting out albums before? Because some of these guys,
They
I
might-
feel like have been doing, because Bruce Springsteen had been putting out albums.
They may have been, but this was,
Non-stop.
when I was looking up trivia, these were things that had made it into chart territory. And it listed, because of that, the video games, that because those things, these bands were encountering
How
new
interesting.
popularity.
At the same time, though, I noticed you said REO Speedwagon was opening,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is kind of how far we have fallen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're still there.
I mean,
But-
unless they were opening for another band of their type, and
Yes.
they, instead of calling it opening, it's like we were billed
We
with,
just happen to be in town.
we were sharing the stage with the Fab Five.
No. Who was what's the band that did a lot of the songs for the Back to the Future soundtrack?
Huey Lewis. And
Huey
the-
Lewis.
Huey
Thank
Lewis.
you.
I grew
Thank
up
you.
with
Yes,
that.
that's who it was.
What happened?
Just pulled my cord of my foot accidentally.
Oh.
Yeah, Huey Lewis, I grew up with that.
Yeah.
Dad would play
They
guitar
were on
with that.
tour with them.
Don't need money.
And yeah,
Don't
Hip to be
need
square.
fame.
how can you miss up the reunion
Don't
of the
need
soundtrack
no
for
credit
Karate Kid all of a
To
sudden?
ride this train.
It is Huey.
You and I looked that up, and yes, he is.
Is that how far, like, when you get older, is that person still alive? Let me check.
I hate to say it that way, but I mean, you have to like wonder. But no, he's
Yeah.
fine. He's not that old. He's only 68.
Yep.
But he has hearing loss,
Ooh.
and he had to cancel 40 tours. See, he's still doing things. He was touring this year in May 7th of 2018. This article.
Yeah, it was.
He's lost some hearing.
I saw him on tour. I saw Huey Lewis in the News opening later on another tour for, what's the guy that re-released Get By With a Little Help From My Friends? Very
Joe
blues.
Cocker?
Yeah, I saw Joe Cocker. I saw them open it for him, and that was an amazing concert. I had no idea how much stuff Joe Cocker performed, and I was just like, oh, that was him? Oh, that was him? But
Well, in September, Huey Lewis released King of the Road, a tribute to Roger Miller featuring Ringo Starr, Dolly Parton, Merle Haggard. I guess he was just on it. He did not. It wasn't
I was
him.
about to say, man, wow, it's like rolling in the hips.
Yeah, Ringo. Peace and love.
Okay, we got it.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Let's keep
We
going.
haven't
'cause
said a thing about Cthulhutech.
this touching on the movies this year.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie's Halloween, which was probably the first time he put out a movie that everybody universally loved.
What everybody universally loved.
Yeah, because nobody House of Thousand Corpses was kind of panned except by his hardcore fans.
We walked out of there and we were like, we are never going to talk about this again.
We
It was
walked out
horrible.
because the film broke.
Oh no! I mean, we watched it the entire way.
Yeah, I know.
And then we walked out. And this is back when I smoked, and me and Lindsay, if I remember, we all just kind of sat there. We were real quiet,
Yeah.
and we're like, we're never going to talk about this again. This
You
was
know, and he's
horrible.
such like a tame dude in real life that, I mean, I say that I've read some really cool things about him, but yeah, his films, I'm like, you messed up, bro.
Yeah.
You're not
Next
okay.
one.
Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Love it.
I've never seen that movie.
Super bad.
I thought I'd heard that the movie was pretty pot compared to the book.
Maybe, but I loved it. I was
And
happy.
it's Neil
The book
Gaiman.
is better.
I
Whatever.
believe.
Okay. Super bad.
That's super bad.
Yeah.
I've not seen that one either, though.
The Mist.
Seen that
Stephen
one.
King's The Mist, the movie. 30 Days of Night.
I think I saw part of, because it had Josh Hartnett in it, I think.
Yeah.
But it's a vampire movie, and
Mhm.
I don't like vampires.
Although they are nasty vampires, they're not sparkly,
Doesn't
happy
matter, I don't like
vampires.
Oh, thank goodness for small favors.
But yeah, so that was 1980. Sorry, not 1980. So that's 2007.
2007.
We're
Get
talking
with it.
about a property that's not been gone that long. I gotta keep remembering
And
this.
it's not gone. He's making
Yeah.
a second
And
edition.
30 minutes later, we're actually
Finally
gonna-
talking to yeah, cut all that out, John. That's Patreon exclusive stuff.
Nah. When we're talking about the book, so Cthulhutech. I like to specifically attribute this book myself to Matthew Grau. This is a crazy history. I don't know if I managed to get it all in the notes, but this game transferred from place to place in its battle to get released. You start off, and it was overseas for Mongoose Publishing. Now, Mongoose Publishing is a British publishing company.
Did they do a lot of expenses for Pathfinder? Is that where
They
I remember
did.
them?
They
Okay.
did.
That's where I remember
Well,
the name
they
from.
did 3.5 and 3rd edition expansions. They did the quintessential elf, the quintessential bard, all those.
Gotcha. I thought the names sounded
Yeah,
familiar.
they did a lot of great works. They released the Traveler series. That was one of the things they hopped on, and
We've talked about them before because in our very first episode we did Babylon 5.
and
that
Babylon
was a Mongoose
5.
offer.
Yeah, that was a huge property for them.
I'm so sad I missed that one.
Yeah,
I
talk about.
love Babylon 5.
Yeah. They were with Mongoose Publishing, and it was under the imprint Flaming Cobra, which is one of Mongoose Publishing's labels that they use, which I don't know why that is, that seemed to be a thing for publishing and gaming, was to have all these subgroups. It's like White Wolf had their own art house, which was things that weren't part of the World of Darkness. But it's like, why not just label it all under the same thing? But so it started off there. Matthew wanted the book published in color. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you so y'all can see it. We'll
I
talk
looked
about
at
the
it
physical
extensively.
property in a bit. It's a very beautiful book, and I think there's good reason why he would want it published in color, but that was kind of his demand. And Mongoose Publishing made the choice to go into black and white publishing. That was what they were going to do with Traveler and a whole lot of their other things. It's just more cost effective, I guess, amongst other things. So he took the property and left Mongoose. It then went to Catalyst Games. And that was a big year for Catalyst when these guys went over to it, because they had acquired Shadowrun and Battletech from the company that got it from Tops, which was FanPro, that which we talked about last time, because of Dark Eye, FanPro, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a nice little tie-in there. But Catalyst got Shadowrun, Battletech, and Eclipse Phase that year, and we're putting out games for that. So Catalyst was hitting big. That was really impressive. Now, what happened though in the midst of all that is that Catalyst, after publishing some books for it, there were several. There were some adventures, several smaller books. They stepped out. They basically were like, we're going to step back and focus only on our core properties, which they declared were Battletech and Shadowrun. They basically said the market at that time was still recovering it for RPGs. They just made this declaration. Eclipse Phase went its own way, and so did this game, which then went to Sandstorm, after they're releasing with Wildfire, which is Matthew Grau's personal company.
Bounced everywhere.
It bounced everywhere because, and I kind of have a lot of respect for him, because the idea is he believed in this product so much that he was willing to fight to get it released in the format and the way that he wanted
Yeah, I was
to.
going to say, once you've got a publisher that's published it, and they make a change,
Mhm.
and being what I am assuming, and this is without knowing much about it, being if he's kind of an indie writer trying to do his own thing, this is his property. I mean,
Yeah.
is this his only property?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, looking through what little I could find on Matthew Grau, this seems to be his main thing. Now, he announced it. I mean, the game released in 2007, but he announced it initially in 2003, and it took 4 years of fighting
Yeah.
and getting this together to publish.
It feels like,
This
you
is
know,
his baby.
for him to have a publisher that is a fairly good-sized publisher, Mongoose, that is still in business today,
Yes.
and they make a change like, we're not going to publish in color, we're going to go black and white, to say, well, you know what, thanks but no thanks, I'm going to take my property elsewhere because black and white doesn't fit what I want.
Yeah.
That's
some balls.
I was going to say, pardon the phrase, but that's pretty ballsy, because who knows? Because this was in the era before Kickstarters, and this is, I want to do this, this is what I'm going to do. And I know that the second edition has also taken quite a bit of time, and it's not yet really available.
But when you think about it, if from announcement to fighting for initial publishing, it took 4 years, it kind of makes sense why second edition is going through a similar situation.
Right, exactly.
But we'll get on to second edition in a bit. Let's go ahead and talk about
the book.
Yeah, the book, the physical property itself. We actually have the core book here at the table today, and I like this book. I have my critiques. The text on the back is too small for me. It's very hard. It's a little hard to read for me. And the text in the book, I feel is a little bit small.
Age.
Yeah,
showing your age.
I am a little, but I do feel like for the appearance of the book, I would like the text to be a little bigger. But the art and layout is really good. It pops. What are y'all's thoughts looking at it? I mean, so far.
It reminds me of cyberpunk.
A little bit,
A
yeah.
lot of the pictures kind of because there are some, especially it's describing Seattle, I believe, and it's a lot of images of the city, and it looks like rain, and it's just gloomy. So it just kind of reminds me of cyberpunk. It's really pretty. I have to say, I mean,
it's a nice book.
The art has definitely got some stuff going.
Yeah, and even with the level of illustrators, you know, the amount of illustrators that took part or participated in this production, everything's pretty consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they're cyberpunk as well. Seattle is a core city for Shadowrun, and there is that kind of tie-in.
Well, and all the game, it seems like so many game publishers are in the Pacific Northwest, and so is this guy. So
the book itself, hardbound, really good binding on it still. This is if you look at it, I think this is a double check. I think this is the Flaming Cobra Mongoose Publishing. That it was very limited. Just flip it over on the back and have a look.
Oh. Framework, Wildfire, Black Flaming Cobra, and Mongoose, as well as Small House.
This is the first printing of this game, which I'm pretty proud to have that. Yeah, definitely. And talking about the property outside of just its appearance, you know, and just from the opening blurb, the idea of this game is that think of H.P. Lovecraft as a prophet who had an idea of what was coming. You know, these creatures from outer space, these beings beyond our understanding, were coming to Earth. And his madness was actually a prophetic dream. So, and this is why, 2 shows ago I said, you know, after we did Alpha Omega, I said I'm going to bring out a book that does what Alpha Omega wanted to do, but does it, I think, better. This is that game.
Yeah.
So you have your prophetic figure in H.P. Lovecraft. You have these creatures from beyond returning to Earth to enslave, overthrow, and take the Earth. It's a really interesting way of thinking of that these alien entities really are alien entities.
Mm-hmm. I can see where you got like a cyberpunk Shadow Run vibe,
because
because
they're kind of hazy. And
they are, and then there's the Chrysalis Corp, and then there's the Angle Project, and there's, you know, there are these, which they're the companies producing the mechs, but still you have all these like official memos from these different corporations that are.
That's what Cyberpunk did.
Yeah.
So, but for those of you also who are listening who like Lovecraft nearly as much as we do, you don't have to know. From what I was able to see, you don't have to know Lovecraft.
No, not at all.
This can be played even if you've never read a Lovecraft book. It would probably help, because I noticed some of the beasts in there. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I know where that's at. Oh, I remember that too.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like watching the Avengers. It's like you don't really have to watch.
You didn't have to read the comics, but to
But
get
it would help.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, but it would help. And so I really liked that. It's kind of weird though because machines and technology really didn't enter into Lovecraft
At all.
The only ones I could think of is The Color from Outer Space, and there was another one. It was a short story about a man who, like, kept his room absolutely frigid, and it's from the perspective of the downstairs neighbor.
Was he the violinist?
The cold room, the one with the
Oh.
air conditioning, and we listened to that on the H.P. Lovecraft podcast not that long ago. They were talking about that specific story.
I don't remember.
The guy was actually dead. Like, he was dead, but he was using the air conditioner in his room to keep himself from rotting.
Well, spoilers. Thanks.
Sorry.
No, I think I was under. For some reason, I'm thinking that that's how he had to live, but I may be wrong. But no, technology really didn't apply, so it's kind of an odd juxtaposition
Yeah.
in this book.
But what's nice, I'm sorry,
Oh, no, please.
what I think, what I'm seeing when you draw a parallel or a correlation to Alpha Omega is what made Alpha Omega so daunting was it created this entire mythology fresh.
Yeah.
It's like Ethan Haas, nobody knows anything about Ethan Haas. The Grigori and the Nephilim and all that stuff. None of that stuff, all of that in the context of Alpha Omega, everything was included in the book. So, whereas in Cthulhutech, if you are a citizen of a English-speaking country in the last 60 years, you have probably heard of Cthulhu, even in passing, or have heard the name Lovecraft, or have heard,
seen something influenced by him.
Even Dagon. Dagon is a biblical figure too. So he kind of took these things he took things that were kind of, Dagon, the fish god or whatever, is a historical deity, and then created these other things that kind of were loosely tied to it because he was very focused on aquatic things. But anyhow, these people, Matthew Groud, didn't have to spend a whole lot of time
Explaining everything.
creating these backstories because go read the book. You know, you can read the Dagon short story in an hour, in an afternoon, and know where some of this stuff is coming from.
And once again, you don't have to read it. You don't have to have prior knowledge, but it helps.
Right.
It helps.
And there's information that you could look up and find from countless sources if you wanted to know more about something outside of this book, whereas in Alpha Omega, if it wasn't in the book and they stopped publishing books, you're kind of just left with what's there.
Just make up whatever.
Right.
Now, also with this game, though, so that's, you have your prophetic figure, but like we've talked about technology, so this is a game taking place in the future. And part of it is the introduction of mechs.
Yeah, I saw that. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So you have two different kinds. You have an actual physical mech that are, metallic humanoid structures, and then there's actually smaller kind of biological mech suits as well that you're fighting against this alien force. Now, this is very much like Robotech.
Oh, I was about to say Invasion Invasion and Southern Cross.
And so it's your Robotech alien invasion coming from outer space, and in order to thwart these enemies, they are having to wear mech suits.
Yeah.
Which also, I guess, kind of ties in, if you're kind of the new gamer, this is Titan Grade, where you're piloting giant mechs to, thwart these things coming against you. You have a choice of two races in the game when you are creating a character. You have your human, and that's it, human, versus, and it's not so much versus, as well as this race that was biologically created by these invading forces.
Yeah, I was just looking them up because I realized that there were several, in the class section, there was art, and they were like completely, like pitch black skin, not like African American.
Yeah. It is the
or African skin tone. It's just like black.
The color thereof, to shades of gray. And I actually really love the art for that race.
They look cool.
Nice. They do look nice.
They also have tattoos, which some of y'all
Like
probably have no idea. I love tattoos. I think tattoos are absolutely interesting to see and look at, and I love the art thereof. This one, race, they have this style of tribal tattoo to themselves. Now, the interesting part as you get into this, this race discovers that they were biologically created to be soldiers to try and wipe out the human race. And all their story, all their backstory, all these things that they were convinced is their truth for why they're doing it, they discover is all lies. And they say, well, forget you and join the humans. And now it's the humans and this race against the incoming invasion.
Oh, more shades of Robotech Zentradi.
Yeah.
They were the same way.
A great parallel right there, again, with anime. This book delves more into the idea of large conflict. This is military-level conflict where you're wearing the suits and going out to combat. I actually made a character for this game, and I wanted to play more of a stealthy kind of ninja-like mech character, and there is that opportunity.
It's just weird to think of.
Yeah.
A stealthy mech.
Yeah. Well, it's
Clon.
yeah. But that was what I wanted to do. And there is actually one of the biological mechs has active camouflage.
Oh.
So.
Ooh. I want the sexy voice trait.
But so that was this book. Now, when they published this, there was actually a cool reaction. The fans were like, "Well, you got Cthulhu and you got these things coming in. I want the Cthulhu mythos too. I don't just want the creatures. I want the occult." And so they put out a book that brought that portion in, where you had cults and religious organizations working for dead gods, and that was an expansion that kind of left the mechs behind. But you all played investigators.
They mentioned cultists in here,
yes.
So they definitely didn't skimp on it.
They didn't skimp on it, but they didn't exactly make that a forte. But in this other book that they released, it's
they went into more detail. Gotcha.
And it's much more like the standard Lovecraft board game and games where everybody's playing an investigator and you're looking into these cults. And so it kind of leaves the whole mech portion of the game behind. And I like that. So it's a very diverse game where you have the opportunity to focus on different parts of this conflict. And yeah, I've never seen another game like this per se that combines these two things. So, my hat's off to this. This is a game that I really enjoy. And as Roxy mentioned, there is a second edition of this on the way. Matthew Grau has been working on this one now for second edition. I know of at least for the last 3 years because at Gen Con 49, again, he was having a meeting where he was announcing, and there's actually video of it on YouTube. Somebody took video of it, and he answered questions or anything else. I think 50, he did it again, 50, he didn't do it. And
no,
then
he did.
One of them, he decided not to do it. But he still, their community online is
because
still
we
very
just couldn't go.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we couldn't go this year either, I don't think.
Yeah, I think
or maybe there wasn't one this year.
I don't think there was one this year, or it collided with the panels that you and I were on.
Well, that could have been. I know you've been talking about the second edition since we got married, so I know it has been at least since 2016. But
yeah,
we've known it's pending.
And we did reach out to the company, and they were going to send us a few things for the podcast, but they were not feeling well. At the time, Matthew was not. And so it's going to be, hopefully, an update that we'll do on the website for Passion Nerdly. That's the property itself in a nutshell. I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter and seeing this getting launched again. What are y'all's thoughts at this point on the property or things in general with this?
I definitely think it'd be fun to play at some point. But, I know we talked about playing it before. And I was still fairly new. I mean, it's been a few years now, but I was still fairly new to RPGs, and it was a little daunting. Looking at it tonight doesn't feel as daunting, but I've seen a lot of really complicated stuff that we've looked at, and so it doesn't look nearly as bad.
And I guess I should have mentioned that the mechanics for this game are not terribly difficult. So he created his own system called Frameworks, and it is a dice pool game with D10s. But
sounds very similar to White Wolf.
You roll a dice pool, but you only get to keep one. unless you roll doubles and then the two add together, or if you roll a straight, like a 3, 4, 5, you add all those together. So there's this opportunity to
Interesting.
yeah, it's a really interesting game, and some people were very questioning of the mechanic itself, but I think it's kind of fun. I mean that's definitely a different way of handling a dice pool, and there's a very easy set difficulty based on a stat. It's a 5-stat system with skills, so it's not a hard game to run. Really,
Yeah.
it isn't.
I suspect, just from what I read and from what you've been saying, people who like Robotech and or Shadowrun would probably like it a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they would.
Yeah, and it's definitely not as kitchen sink as Rifts or as Alpha Omega. This is a very set focus. This is the focus is always humanity versus this force coming in. Yeah, but it's one of those things that I appreciate that. Give me a goal.
Yeah.
Especially with a game that is not a major genre. Because like fantasy is an open world sandbox that you can build whatever you need. But if you open world sandbox this concept, it'd be very hard, I think. And so that's why I appreciate that it has a limited scope.
Yeah.
They were at Gen Con and they had a Q&A,
Ah, okay.
but it was, I believe, the day that I was sick and you were in a game.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going through their Facebook page, and they've got some snarky fans
They do.
that are very disgruntled that it's taken as long as it has.
And
Well,
It's
yeah.
like, you know what? Go away.
Suck it.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm going to rant here for a moment. Just briefly.
do it.
Guys, fans out there of the role-playing enterprise in general, especially those of you who follow Kickstarters, give your publishers a frickin' break. Because the fact of the matter is, this is not their main employment. They are doing this as a side job because they love the genre, and they are dedicating their time. If you yourself are not volunteering some service thereof or hoping to help, it does not help them or help the product get released any quicker writing them and writing them constantly about how much they suck.
Or just being a snarky butt in the comments and making jokes,
Yeah.
that imply that, their property is never going to be finished.
Helmgast, which published recently a game that is kind of, I guess, going to be controversial, or I don't think it is, but Cult, the Divinity Lost. It took 2 years for it to get published after the Kickstarter.
Wait till you see that one.
But the thing is, so it took 2 years, and people were writing them and saying, oh, it's never going to get released. When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? And of course, they're like, if you'd like your money back, we can give it to you.
See, what's interesting is one of the comments. Now, the guy who's like, please don't take this the wrong way. I just know you guys have full-time jobs, but would you consider kickstarting it? And we gave you the money up front if that would help speed this along. And if Matthew Grau runs the Cthulhutech Facebook page, which I assume he does, the Cthulhutech page responded and said, the Kickstarter will be for the print run of the book, because I assume they're doing a PDF, a digital version, first. He's like, that will be for the print run. He's like, but we do not want, he's like, we're not coming to Kickstarter empty-handed.
Yeah.
They want to have the book done and ready to print.
Yeah, and God bless them for that.
Yeah, and so, it's like, or you could do it the way that Cult did it,
Mm-hmm.
which it took 2 years because they paid him up front, and it still took 2 years.
Yeah.
So don't ever assume that, well, what if I just pay you now? Can you do it faster?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, man, because it doesn't mean I can't, or I'm not going to have to work my other job, or I'm not going to have to support my family. Okay, I raised $50,000 in a Kickstarter. That doesn't feed my kids.
No, and it's,
if I'm printing a book on it,
and really, I'm sick and tired of a toxic trolling fandom like we have for comic book movies or Star Wars. I am sick of it. And so please, guys, back off. Let them do their job. It will come.
Write your fan fiction if you want something faster that you're going to like.
How long did we have to wait for 3rd edition? Honestly, from Wizards of the Coast, how long did we have to wait?
As speaking as someone who deals with emails all day because of my job, we get that, why aren't you working faster? It's like, well, you keep sending us emails. That slows us down.
Yeah.
We have to spend time answering those emails. Or at least, you have to go through them just to make sure there's nothing that you have to address. but the money up front, it reminds me of that. I don't know if it was real or not, but it was printed up like an essay question. If 20 orchestra members perform a 1 hour, do a 1 hour performance, how long will it take 40 performers?
Yeah.
It's like it's still going to take the
Still
same
going to
amount
be a
of time.
1 hour
Yeah.
performance.
So yeah, guys, come on.
This isn't a creative math issue. This
Yeah.
is.
Would you rather wait extra to make sure that it is a quality game,
Yeah, and I'm like,
or do you want them to rush it and have a lot of glaring issues?
Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is, I can completely respect what they're trying to do because you don't want a game that you're going, once it comes out, you're going to have to pay your publisher, you're going to have to pay your artists, you're going to have to pay your writers. When you do this the hard way, where you kickstart and it pays for your work, you end up with less at the end. Nah, let these guys make their product and own it themselves so that when they put it out, they reap the benefit, and so do we.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of my rant on that and the
No,
horror
I totally
of
get it.
toxic
Totally get it.
fandom. So, anyway, yeah. So there is the wonderful world of Cthulhutech.
We didn't even get to talk about
That's
your book.
That's fine.
Oh, no, yeah,
Just before we start, I am not. Oh, sorry about
That's
that.
all right.
I am not getting paid to advertise this, so just let that. There is no conflict of interest here. I love books, as my roommates will tell you. I love trivia. I love Lovecraft, and that is why I got the new annotated H.P. Lovecraft by Leslie Klinger. He also did the annotated Sherlock Holmes. It's 3 books, but it has all of the stuff. It goes through everything. Well, in this one, it's not all of Lovecraft's work, but he spends like 15 pages talking about Lovecraft's life. It goes through his communications with other authors, clarifications on some things that he wrote. And it actually has some photocopies of things that he has, that like little maps he drew.
Oh.
And so it is just, if you like trivia, if you like history, this is an excellent book to have. It's like over 800 pages.
Sweet.
But it's fantastic. And as a bonus, it will tell you, there's one little thing in there that will tell you what Lovecraft said was the actual pronunciation
Oh, wow.
of
Nice.
Cthulhu. It's a very strange, it's almost impossible to do with a regular.
Because that's what he wanted, was like an impronounceable word.
Yeah, it's almost like Cthulhu. That's
Yeah.
kind of sort of.
They don't say the H in the
But
T.
but he's also kind of, he's apparently said it numerous different ways. Yeah, and so the introduction is by Alan Moore.
Okay. Which
So
is a name that people should.
well known to everyone. But yeah, it is just something that I wholeheartedly recommend you get. Leslie Klinger is very good, by the way.
Mhm.
I love he's got all of the references and everything. So if you love trivia, if you love Lovecraft, this is the perfect book to get.
Yeah.
So
It looks neat. Oh my! You're gonna okay. Whatever.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and call it there for the night. We appreciate y'all coming out, and thanks, guys.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See you later.